I accepted a position at a nursing home and uncovered a sinister secret in the haunted basement. Sarah Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that she had bargained her soul away. Eager to help her mother with mounting bills, she accepted a position at Maple Grove Haven, a nursing home that reeked more of decay than care. The peeling wallpaper hung like wilted dreams, and the fluorescent lights flickered like dying stars. It was here she would discover that the shadows had a life of their own. The job felt like a necessary evil, but the atmosphere was thick with unease. The residents shuffled about, drawn into their own worlds of forgotten memories. Old Mrs. Jenkins muttered curses at the wallpaper, while Mr. Crandall sat watching television, his eyes distant. Their grumpiness felt harmless until dusk turned black, and the night shifts began. Sarah donned her scrubs, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, she traded vibrance for an eerie ambience that seeped into her bones on her first night. The sounds began low muffled cries and whispers, echoing from the basement. Chilled her to her core. She often told herself they were just the creaks of an old building, but the truth tugged at her insides. The residents who often roamed the halls began disappearing, their absence smoothed over by staff who offered reassuring smiles that felt more like masks. Yet beneath her fear, curiosity simmered. What lay behind the whispers? What secrets did this place cradle like a lost child? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Driven by fear and uncertainty, Sarah's instincts urged her into the dark underbelly of Maple Grove Haven. One sleepless night, a nagging thought led her to a hidden door, its handle dusted over and neglected, wedged tightly behind an old filing cabinet. Heart racing, she pushed it open and descended the narrow staircase leading into the belly of the nursing home. The air grew colder. Each breath came like icicles piercing her lungs. The flickering lights barely pierced the dark, but as Sarah reached the bottom, her chest tightened. What she found was a horror beyond her imagination. Old medical equipment rusted and broken. Charts revealing grotesque experiments tied to Maple Grove's respected director, a man worshipped in the community. Photographs of helpless residents in various states of distress flashed before her like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She stumbled back, horror twisting in her gut. Betrayal and terror gripped her as she realized that everyone she trusted had turned a blind eye. A voice whispered her name, sending shivers down her spine, a soft murmur that felt like fingers tracing across her skin. She spun around, the shadows closing in, panic igniting a fierce fight-or-flight response within her. Just as she turned to flee, a figure darted past, leaving her breathless. Knowing she was no longer just a visitor, she was a prey. The staircase loomed behind her like an all-consuming void, and voices swelled around her, lost souls trapped, desperate for release. With every step she took, the path shifted beneath her. Reality bent like a cruel joke, the exit slipping away. Before she could comprehend, a cold grip locked around her shoulder. A low, mocking laugh echoed through the darkness, sealing her fate in the inescapable hell of Maple Grove Haven. What had she walked into? She now feared that this night might snare her forever. Sarah's heart raced, pounding hard against her ribs, as if trying to break free from the horror that enclosed her. The grip on her shoulder felt like ice, paralyzing and unyielding. She managed to scream, but it died in her throat, stifled by an overwhelming nausea that crawled up her spine. The darkness pulsed around her, the air thick with despair. Shadows twisted and contorted, forming grotesque shapes on the wall. She could hear whispering, incoherent yet urgent, each murmur tugging at her sanity. Was it the spirits of the lost residents? What had happened to them? This was more than just a nursing home, it was a mausoleum of twisted secrets. Gritting her teeth, Sarah forced herself to turn and face the figure behind her. The dim light barely illuminated the pale face of a woman, her eyes wide and haunting. It was Mrs. Prescott, a resident she had thought was safely tucked in bed earlier in the night. Instead, her frail form seemed oddly animated, as if she had transcended her old age and decay. "Help them," Mrs. Prescott's voice echoed, hollow and desperate. "They need you." The ones in the rooms before Sarah could respond. The shadows surged forward, swallowing the crone in a suffocating embrace. Panic flooded through Sarah's veins. The grip on her shoulder released, but a rush of cold surged behind her, like a tide retreating. Adrenaline kicked in, and she dashed towards the stairwell, her footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. But the path shifted beneath her, as if the basement itself conspired to keep her there. Walls pulsed, elongated, and whispered. Sarah stumbled, fighting for stability, her eyes darting towards the flickering lights above that felt more like ominous watchers than guides. She needed to escape. She had to find out what had happened to the residents who had vanished. Why did her colleagues keep sending her those empty smiles? Racing back, she searched for another exit, her hands groping along the rough walls. The whispers grew louder, blending into an agonizing chorus, begging for release. Their sorrow wrapped around her like a noose, tightening. A reverberating bang made her jump, and she froze as the door she had come through slammed shut, sealing her fate. Sarah, the voice was softer now, almost comforting but laced with dread. "Stay with us forever," heart hammering. Sarah picked up the pace, determination reinvigorating her every step. Racing past rows of warped, dusty equipment that seemed to watch her with hungry eyes, she spotted a dim red light further down the corridor. It flickered, beckoning a chance to see the truth behind the madness, to uncover what really happened at Maple Grove Haven. As she approached, a sudden realization gripped her. This wasn't just a facility. It was a place of sacrifice, where the living surrendered to the will of something much darker. Her breath quickened. The red light pulsated, almost like a heartbeat, like the last breath of those trapped within its walls. Just as she reached it, the air pulsed around her, and shadows coalesced at the entrance. They formed a wall, and for the first time, she understood the depth of her peril. There was no turning back now. The basement held secrets that suffocated, and she stood on the brink of a revelation that could destroy her sanity. "Join us," the voices sang, overpowering, resonating with despair and desperation. She flung herself into the light, praying that whatever lay beyond wasn't more terrifying than the wall of shadows behind her. But as she stumbled through, she found herself facing a mirror, her own reflection, warped. It smiled back, but it wasn't her at all. "Who are you?" she gasped, heart racing, panic flooding her senses. The reflection didn't answer. It merely gestured towards the darkness behind her, drawing her gaze back into the black maw she had fought against. The shadows whispered louder, full of longing. Were they hungry for her or for revenge? More importantly, would she be able to escape the horrifying fate that now chained her to Maple Grove Haven? Desperation clawed at her mind as she prepared to confront whatever awaited her in the dark. Could she truly unveil the sinister truth of this place before it consumed her? The mirror shattered with a deafening crash, causing Sarah to jump back, her breath hitching in her throat. Shards of glass rained down, twinkling like demented stars against the cold concrete floor. As the last piece clattered, the whispers intensified, morphing into ghastly wails that twisted her insides. They weren't just cries for help, they were curses. The jagged edges of the mirror reflected the chaos of her surroundings, each piece a fragment of the horror that darted just out of her sight. She tore her gaze away, her heart pounding louder than the cacophony surrounding her. The corridor stretched before her, dark and foreboding, a gaping maw demanding entry. She had faced spirits, shadows, and now this, for whatever lived here, demanded a toll. Swallowing her fear, Sarah took a step forward, the chilling air biting at her face. Her fingers trembled as she pushed aside the larger shards littering the floor. Minutes felt like hours, but she pressed deeper into the gloom, inching closer to the pulsating red light that promised truth yet filled her with dread. As she approached, she caught glimpses of figures beyond the threshold pale, ethereal beings suspended in the air, their expressions twisted in agony. Each face felt familiar. Was that Mrs. Prescott? No. Keep moving, before she could turn. A cold breeze surged past her, wrapping around her like a vice. It froze her in place, and a voice reverberated through her mind, chilling her to the bone. Join us in the dark. You will never be alone again. This time, the tone was different, soothing, almost inviting. No, she whispered, fear battling against an odd compulsion that tugged at her heart. Shadows writhed toward her, desperate hands reaching for her flesh. A deep gnawing sensation ignited in her chest, as if they were feeding on her very essence. She caught a flicker of her image in the fragmented reflections. The warped visage grinned back, eyes gleaming malevolently. You will be part of this, it teased. This is what you want, I assenti it? No, she shouted, feeling the weight of their collective sorrow push her closer to surrender. That was when she glimpsed something, a doorway, half hidden in the darkness, with a flickering light spilling from the edge. Maybe it was an exit. Perhaps hope still existed beyond those shadows. In that moment, clarity rushed in. You have to go, she screamed at herself, determination replacing despair. Sprinting towards the door, she felt a surge of icy fingers rake against her skin, desperation clawing at her back, trying to pull her back into their abyss. The whispers morphed into screams, each word reinforcing the call of the void, with every ounce of fight remaining in her. Sarah lunged for the door as it creaked open, revealing a cramped staircase spiraling upwards. She dove through, scrambling onto the first step as shadows roared behind her, a tempest of darkness trying to drag her back. Panic surged anew as she grappled onto the rails, powering up through the ascending darkness. Please, just let me out, she cried, but the shadows snarled, echoing back her plight with cruel laughter. Suddenly, the air thickened, as if the very essence of the building had come alive. The steps shifted beneath her feet, and she stumbled, nearly losing her grip. She braced for impact, her heart racing. What if she was doomed to join them, damned to wander Maple Grove Haven, eternally trapped in sorrow? As she emerged at the top, gasping for breath, she found herself in an unfamiliar room bathed in stark white light, a stark contrast to the suffocating dampness below. It was a stark contrast to the chaos she had fled. But then, her relief turned to fear. The room felt alive, vibrating with energy. And standing before her, framed in the blinding light, was a deep figure, a silhouette like no other, looming ominously against the backdrop of what seemed like forgotten memories. Welcome back, Sarah, it rasped, its eyes glowing with a sickly malevolence. What are you? She whispered, the shadows of doubt rising again within her. And as the figure stepped closer, her heart raced with the dread knowledge that the worst was yet to come. What had she uncovered? And how far would she go to unravel the secrets buried in the darkness? The figure loomed closer, its features blurring in the overwhelming white light. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet felt anchored to the floor, paralyzed by a mix of terror and fascination. The air around her crackled with an unnameable energy, radiating a cold that seeped into her skin. Why are you here? The figure demanded, voice almost melodic, but threaded with malice. It stepped fully into the light, revealing a twisted smile carved deep into its face. Shadows danced around it, writhing like snakes, the darkness flickering in and out like a dying flame. I was just trying to escape, Sarah stammered, the bravado she had mustered before slipping away. The ornate room felt claustrophobic now, walls pulsating as if they were alive. Escape? It mocked, the laughter echoing hauntingly. You cannot escape what is already part of you. Feel it? The heaviness in your heart, the darkness wrapped around your soul. It extended a hand, long fingers tapering into claws hovering dangerously close. The chill spread through her and she gasped. No, this couldn't be real. She was losing her grip. Your curiosity brought you here, Sarah. You wanted to uncover secrets. And now, the truth is within your reach. She swallowed hard, images of the lost and tormented souls flickering through her mind. Mrs. Prescott, the whispers, they were all connected. What truth could possibly await? Let them rest, she pleaded, fighting against the rising tide of despair. They deserve peace, No one deserves peace in this place. It snarled, its voice morphing into a chorus of the mournful voices she had heard below. Each scream felt like a stab to her gut. They are bound here just as you are. The ground trembled beneath her, the walls shimmering. Suddenly, shadows surged forward, clawing towards her. Their grips were icy, pulling her down. Desperately, she swung her arms, kicking back, fighting against the relentless tide. "Get away from me," she cried, the words escaping her lips like shards of glass. In that moment, she felt herself teetering on the edge, close to giving in. "Why fight?" The figure cooed, watching her with a twisted glee. "You could join them, embrace the darkness. It is beautiful here." "No," she gasped. Memories of laughter and warmth flooded her mind, things she thought would never matter again. She couldn't let this malevolence erase them. With every ounce of strength, she twisted away from the specters grasping at her, breaking through the barrier of their despair. The silhouette began to fade, its body swallowed by the shadows that crawled back into the corners of the room, but its laughter lingered, haunting her. "You will return, Sarah," it promised, fading into a menacing echo. "We are not finished." Panting, she stumbled back, glancing around wildly. The stark room now felt emptier, but the haunting chill remained, prickling her skin. She knew she had to find a way out, to escape the hold of the darkness that was gripping Maple Grove Haven tight. As she dashed toward the door she had entered, she found it slammed shut, locked tight by an unseen force. Panic surged, clawing at her throat. She pressed her palms against the cold wood, the frantic thud of her heart echoing in her ears. The whispers were back, now loud and insistent, demanding her attention. "Open," she pleaded, but the wood remained unyielding, as if a solid wall now stood between her and freedom. Then she noticed something, an inscription carved into the door frame, faded but legible. "Only the truth shall unlock the path." What truth? What had she missed? Shadows writhed at the edges of her vision, and the walls seemed to close in. She felt it, the weight of all those lost souls pressing down, forcing her to confront her deepest fears. The room lurched, and she gasped, steadied herself. "Find the truth, Sarah," they whispered. With grim determination, she stepped back and took a deep breath, her mind racing and heart pounding. The truth awaited somewhere in this twisted haven. And as she searched the room for clues, she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running. What awaited her in the depths of madness? It was just the beginning, but the dark was far from finished with her yet. The door remained locked, the inscription burning into her mind. "Only the truth shall unlock the path." Panic coursed through her veins. The walls seemed to whisper, taunting her about the secrets she was missing, the horrors waiting to ensnare her. "Think, Sarah," she urged herself. She frantically scanned the room. Every ornate detail, the twisted patterns in the wallpaper, the flickering candlelight that once seemed charming now felt sinister and alive. She stepped further into the dim space, heart racing. Then she saw it, a small, half-hidden painting propped against the wall in the corner. Heart pounding, she approached, praying it held answers. The painting depicted a gathering of shadowy figures, their faces obscured, but their eyes glimmered with a knowing malice. In the center stood a towering figure, its back turned to her. As she moved closer, she noticed an unusual inscription beneath, just like the one on the door. It read, "Who remembers the forgotten?" What did that mean? It twisted something deep within her, a tight knot of dread. She could feel the shadows creeping in, a cold hand tracing her spine. "Who?" she whispered into the stillness. No sooner had the question escaped her lips than she heard it, a faint murmur. "Remember us." The voices were soft, more like a breeze rustling through leaves, but the weight behind them was undeniably present. "Sarah, help us," they called to her, pulling at her like a tidal wave of despair. Fighting against the grip of dread, she pressed her palm against the painting, feeling the cold wood beneath. "What do you want from me?" she cried, desperation turning her voice raw. "You're here to unearth the truth." A voice echoed, deeper this time. It reverberated like a drum in the depths of her mind, clawing at her sanity. But truths can be as sharp as glass. She jerked her hand back, staring at the painting in horror. The shadowy figures began to shift in the frame, their eyes burning into her, pleading and accusing. She stumbled back, searching for stability. The floor vibrated, and the air felt thicker, pressing against her bones. The whispers accelerated, a cacophony of voices rising around her. Each word clawed at her. Find the forgotten. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps. It was suffocating. She needed to act, needed to uncover the truth before the darkness consumed her completely. The only clue she had was the haunting question. Who had been forgotten? She turned, looking around what felt more and more like a trap. Shadows inched closer, curling around her ankles. Who? She shouted. It was a cry of defiance, of fear. And that S when she saw it, a small door embedded in the wall, almost invisible against the decor. This handle glinted under the dim light. Her heart leaped in her chest. As she approached, the whispers grew louder, shaking her resolve. Open it, find the truth. With trembling fingers, she reached for the handle. The cold metal sent chills crawling up her arm, but she couldn't stop now. She had to know. But before she could pull it open, the paintings around her morphed violently, faces illuminating in a flash of pale light. Screams burst forth, jagged and piercing. You shouldn't be here. They shrieked in unison. In that moment, she hesitated, an icy dread crashing over her. What's behind this door? She wondered aloud with a single breath. She turned the handle, the door creaking open against the collective wails that filled the air. As if through a veil, darkness beckoned from beyond. But what lay beyond that darkness? What forgotten horrors awaited her? Steeling herself, she stepped forward, the terror around her rising to a fever pitch, and knew she was about to cross a line into the very depths of what Maple Grove Haven harbored. This was no longer just a search for truth. It was a plunge into madness. The door creaked open, revealing only darkness, a thick shadow that swallowed her whole. A sense of foreboding wrapped around Sarah like a suffocating blanket. She hesitated, the echoes of the screams still reverberating in her ears. The air was stagnant, heavy with secrets long buried. Find the forgotten, the words hung in the air, a grim challenge. Heart pounding, she stepped over the threshold and felt a jolt of cold air rush past her, like icy fingers grazing her skin. Instinctively, she lifted her phone, the light flickering weakly ahead of her like a reluctant guardian. The narrow space opened up into a cramped hallway, its walls grainy and damp. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, but when she turned, nothing was there. The faint sound of dripping water echoed, punctuated by the distant scratching, like fingernails on wood, bringing her pulse to a frantic rhythm. Each step felt perilous, the ground beneath her shifting as if alive. Underfoot, the floorboards groaned, protesting her every move. She pressed deeper into the abyss, guided by a primal urge to unveil whatever lay ahead. Was she truly ready to face whatever secrets lay buried here? In the dim light, she caught sight of something gleaming. At the far end of the hallway, an old trunk sat half open, its rusty hinges creaking as if they hadn't been disturbed in decades. The whispers surged anew, calling to her a ghastly symphony of pleas, layered in desperation. Open it, help us, summoning her courage. She approached, kneeling by the trunk. The wood was worn, pocked with time. She felt drawn to it as if the trunk was the anchor point of all that had been lost. What if it contained the answers she so desperately sought? What if it was empty, like her courage felt in that moment? She wrenched the lid open. Inside, tattered clothes lay strewn haphazardly, but amidst them glimmered something distinctly out of place. A small, old mirror, its frame ornate but tarnished. She reached in, fingers grazing the fabric, and found it oddly warm to the touch. As she pulled it out, her heartbeat quickened. The surface shimmered, pulsating with a strange energy. She turned it slightly, the reflection capturing her wide, terrified eyes, but then it shifted. The mirror showed not just her, but behind her a flicker, a shadow moving unnaturally quick. Sarah gasped, spinning around, but nothing was there. Just darkness, and the echoing whispers grew louder. Help us remember. The voices morphed, twisting themselves into mournful cries as if they were writhing through her very soul. She felt something sink deep within her. The forgotten, were they trapped here, lost within the echoes of this haunted place? Desperation clawed at her throat. What do you want from me? She cried out, her voice trembling against the clamor of the darkness. Uncover the truth, the sacrifice. The voices melded together, rising and falling like a ragged tide, making her head spin. With the shaft of light from her phone illuminating the jagged mirror, she looked closer, willing the reflection to yield its secrets. Suddenly, she saw it, the figure from the painting, the towering shadow, now manifesting in the glass. Its hollow eyes stared back at her, stretching her reality to its breaking point. Could feel her fear, her confusion, and it wanted something. No, I can't. The words caught in her throat as the shadows closed in, wrapping around her in tendrils of icy dread. Before she could back away, the mirror tilted, its surface swirling like a tempest. She caught glimpses of anguished faces, images of those forgotten, lives taken, promises broken. All accused her as the haunting voices crescendoed into a furious roar. What have I done? Sarah gasped, feeling their pain seep into her, filling the void with a suffocating sense of guilt. The mirror cracked then, a web of fractured glass reflecting the chaos around her. And in that moment, she realized this was no mere inquiry into the past. This was a reckoning, and she was the penitent sinner standing before her judgment. She needed to escape, but as she turned to flee, the door slammed shut behind her, dark laughter echoing through the hall, tightening its grip like a vice around her sanity. In that moment, she understood. She had uncovered something far more sinister than she could have ever imagined. But what would it cost her to survive? And as the shadows converged, a single thought gripped her heart in terror. Was the key to her freedom hidden in accepting the truths of those long forgotten? What had she unleashed? And could she ever turn back? The shadows pressed in around her, thickening like smoke. Sarah's heart raced as fear clawed at her throat. The laughter rang in her ears, echoing off the damp walls, mocking her resolve. She felt the weight of the mirror in her hand, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths and haunted memories. "Let me out!" she screamed, pounding on the door, the sounds swallowed by the darkness. Panic surged within her as the scratching sounds intensified, echoing closer, sharper, like a predator honing in on its prey. The mirror, still clutched in her trembling fingers, pulsed with energy that felt almost alive. She returned her gaze to it, desperately searching for answers. The fractured surface shimmered, twisting her face into grotesque reflections. Yet within the chaos, she could see them, the faces of the lost, their mouths moving in silent despair. "Help us remember," they pleaded once more, their eyes wide with agony. "What truth?" she whispered, choking on her own dread. "What sacrifice?" In response, the mirror fogged over, revealing a fleeting image, a gathering. Flickering candlelight illuminated a circle of figures clad in dark robes, their faces obscured. A chant rose, a low, hollow sound that felt like it was clawing its way into her mind. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the hallway, pulling Sarah's gaze away from the mirror. The door's hinges shuddered, as if something powerful was pressing against it from the outside. "Get back," she shouted, adrenaline fueling her resolve as she stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding the trunk. The scratching grew frantic, claws dragging over wood, echoing her own racing heartbeat. She pressed the cold glass closer to her face, hoping to glimpse something that might guide her. Instead, the mirror darkened, revealing a single word scrawled in what appeared to be blood. "Remember." With a surge of determination, she turned back to the door, her pulse thrumming like a drum. If the mirror held the key, then maybe she needed to confront it. It was now or never. Raising the mirror high, she shouted, "Show me. Show me what you want." Her voice reverberated through the chamber, ringing against the walls, almost daring whatever lurked in the depths to reveal itself. The air shifted. The whispers grew louder, as if the very essence of the place shook with her words. The room around her morphed. The trunk vanished, swallowed by the abyss, and the shadows pulled back, revealing the faint outlines of the robed figures. They circled her, chanting in a twisted harmony, their faces now becoming clearer, eyes filled with longing and horror. Sarah, a whisper drifted through the air, the voice carrying familiar sorrow. She recognized it instantly, a voice long buried in her memories, one that had haunted her dreams since childhood. "Sarah, help us!" Desperation flooded her veins. "What do you need?" she cried out, her voice a mixture of fear and determination. In response, the mirror erupted with a blinding light, illuminating the entire space. The shadows recoiled. Screams both of terror and anguish filled the air as the figures grew restless, agitated. "Remember the sacrifice, embrace it." The words echoed in eerie unison, and the mirror fell silent. Its surface now a chaotic whirlwind of images flashing before her eyes, moments of laughter, tears, the stench of betrayal and an overwhelming guilt, all encased within the very souls that beckoned her to remember. Her breath quickened. The flickering candlelight, the shrouded figures, was this a cult? A ritual that demanded an offering? Fear entwined with clarity. The pieces were all fitting together, but understanding came with a heavy price. Before she could process it all, the door shuddered again violently. The whispers began to merge into a deafening roar, the figures closing in. With every ounce of strength, clenching the mirror, Sarah faced her own shadows. "You want me to remember? Then take me. I am ready." As the shadows lunged, her vision spiraled into the mirror's depth, and the last thing she heard was the cacophony of screams and laughter, the forgotten, converging to reclaim their truth. What awaited her on the other side? Would she find redemption or chaos? She stepped into darkness, and the mirror shattered, scattering pieces of her fate. The darkness engulfed her. A suffocating silence replaced the chaos of laughter and whispered pleas. Breathless, Sarah felt weightless, drifting through an endless black void. Time lost meaning. Seconds stretched into lifetimes. No colors, no shapes, just intense stillness enveloping her. Then came a jolting sensation, as if she had plummeted from the sky into a dark abyss. She landed hard on a cold, damp floor. The air closed in around her, thick and heavy, and for a moment, panic flared. Sarah scrambled to her feet, hands trembling as they brushed against the cold stone walls. A low, mournful sound resonated in the air, reverberating against her chest, echoing her own rising dread. Light flickered from the corners of her vision, drawing her attention. She turned toward it, her pulse quickening. Stumbling forward, walls breathing shadows that mocked her every step, she caught sight of a dimly lit corridor stretching ahead, lined with faded photographs hung, as if in a macabre gallery. Shadowy faces stared back at her, their eyes hollow and sad, reminding her of the figures she had seen moments before. "Sarah, help us!" The voices wrapped around her, sending chills skittering down her spine. Were they real, or just haunting remnants of her own broken mind? The photographs seemed to breathe, flicker, as the whispers intensified. Focusing on one picture, she recognized a face, a woman with soft, pleading eyes, adorned in the same dark robes she had seen before. "Who are you?" Sarah breathed, her voice but a thread in the weighty silence. A soft response floated back, merging with the echoes of sorrow. "We are your past, your family." The word family ignited a memory, yet it was painful, like a jagged shard of glass. She had buried it deep, but now, fanned by the haunted corridor, memories ignited, terrifying and intoxicating, of laughter twisted with screams, of love entwined with betrayal. "Why did you bring me here?" Sarah demanded, fear swelling inside her like a tide. "Remember the sacrifice, embrace it." The voices chorused, deeper now, each phrase inflected with a life of its own, echoing off the walls as if the very stones were complicit in her torment. The flickering light intensified, stirring the shadows into a flurry of movement that capered around her like specters awakened from a long slumber. She felt the temperature drop, her breath escaping in small puffs of fog, panic gripping her heart. With the mirror now torn apart in her mind, visions blurred. colliding into one another. Faces, names, and places she tried to forget emerged, each a sliver of the past demanding her acknowledgement. Every second in their presence felt like a weight added to her chest until she could barely breathe. "Remember the basement," a voice whispered, colder than the air around her, freezing her soul in place. Unable to resist, she began to move, drawn toward the deeper recesses of the corridor. Each step tugged her closer to the sinister heart of it all, a basement that no doubt held far more than dust and memories, hidden beneath the layers of time. Yet dread pooled in her stomach. Was she ready to face the truth lying in the darkness? Would uncovering one more secret shatter her fragile sanity? Ahead, the corridor twisted into a dark staircase leading down into the unknown. As she stood before it, trembling, the laughter returned louder and more unhinged than before, as if mocking her reluctance with a familiar, dissonant melody. "Embrace it, embrace us," the voices urged, inviting her with a sickly sweet promise. With a final breath, emboldened by fear and unresolved stories, Sarah plunged into the depths below. The weight of the world fell away, replaced by something glittering and sinister awaiting her beneath the surface. What truths might she unearth? And at what cost? As the darkness swallowed her whole, the whispers grew closer, her heart racing to keep pace with the echoes of a past that would not be silenced. The air thickened as Sarah descended the staircase, each step echoing like a heartbeat against the damp stone. Darkness wrapped around her like cold tendrils, squeezing the breath from her lungs. She blinked, trying to pierce through the pitch-black void, terrified of what might lie ahead in the abyss below. As she reached the bottom, the flicker of light burst forth like a violent sun, momentarily blindsiding her. Her heart raced, every instinct screaming at her to turn back, to escape this nightmare. Struggling to regain her bearings, she squinted into the flickering glow, where an old oil lamp swung from the ceiling, casting erratic shadows that twisted and contorted like dancing phantoms. In the center of the room lay a wooden table, covered in dust and remnants of something long past. Candles, their waxen bodies frozen in mid-drip, surrounded an eerie circle. Within that circle lay a cracked mirror, reflecting distorted images that sent shivers crawling down her spine. The whispers, now more insistent, rose like a low chant, intertwining with her frantic thoughts. "Remember the sacrifice," they echoed, urging her to step closer, to delve deeper into what had once been. But buried deep in her mind was a gnawing question. What had her family done? With trembling fingers, she reached out to touch the mirror. The moment her skin brushed against the cold surface, a rush of images flooded her mind, visions not her own but memories of someone else. She saw a small, dark-haired girl standing in this very room. The girl was frightened, eyes wide in terror as shadowy figures loomed over her. "Help me," the girl cried, her voice a haunting melody that wove into the air, chilling Sarah to her core. The memory cascaded, revealing a ritual, a desperate plea for protection, and finally, a sacrifice that had broken the very fabric of their family. "Stop!" Sarah shouted, recoiling. "You can't do this." The shadows pulsed around her, thickening as the chanting intensified, drowning her pleas. The air felt electric, charged with an unspeakable energy, and dread gripped her heart. Faces pressed against the flickering light, twisting in agony as if they too were bound to this cursed place. "Why didn't you save me?" The small girl's voice echoed in the depths of Sarah's mind, shattering her composure. It was a question laced with accusation, and Sarah could do nothing but shake with the weight of it. She felt trapped, caught in an unseen web spun from the actions of her ancestors. The wind howled as the lamp flickered violently, throwing shadows into chaos. A sudden crash startled her. Something was moving in the darkness, whatever it was, watching from the edges, hungry and vengeful. Sarah's heart raced. There was no going back. She had to face the truth of her family's past. Gritting her teeth, she forced herself deeper into the room, drawn to the center where the circle pulsated with a life of its own. Something beneath the floorboards begged to be uncovered. With urgent desperation, she dropped to her knees, prying at the wooden slats, uncaring about the splinters biting into her palms as the boards groaned and shifted. The low growl of the whispering shadows became a deafening roar. Then she found it a small, ornate box buried beneath the layers of dust. Clutching it tightly, Sarah felt a pulse of energy that sent shockwaves through her fingers. Whatever laid inside could unravel everything she thought she knew. But as she hesitated, the shadows cavorted closer, their ethereal fingers grasping at the edges of her mind. Each fleeting moment felt like a countdown, racing toward an inevitable climax. What was hidden inside that box? And would opening it unleash horrors that transcended time? The darkness loomed, thick and hungry, ready to consume whatever hope she had left. The whispers circled like vultures, poised to reveal a secret that could obliterate the very essence of who she was. With a steely resolve, Sarah drew in a deep breath, forcing herself to steady the trembling hands clutching the ornate box. Faded gold filigree lined the edges, glistening softly in the flickering lamp light. She could feel the shadows creeping closer, their whispers swirling around her like a thunderous storm ready to pounce. It was now or never. Please let this be the key, she murmured to herself, feeling the weight of her family's darkness pressing down on her like lead. Gritting her teeth, she flicked open the latch with a shaky hand. The lid creaked like a protesting ghost. Inside lay a collection of aged papers, brittle with time, along with a small, tarnished locket. She carefully lifted the locket, tracing her fingers over the lovingly carved designs. It felt heavy, both in weight and in significance. Remember, a whisper echoed, blending with the ever-growing cacophony of shadows clawing at her sanity. Fighting against the panic rising in her chest, she opened the locket. Inside, a portrait of the same girl from her vision stared back at her wide-eyed, innocent. Her heart twisted as she recognized the resemblance. This girl was her, a younger version, lost to time, caught in the echoes of a haunting sacrifice. "I'm sorry." The girl's voice rang in her ears, tinged with longing and sorrow. "You have to remember." Suddenly, clarity struck Sarah like lightning. The shadows thrummed with expectancy. They were integral to her family's history, bound by blood, sacrifice, and the weight of dark secrets hidden beneath Maple Grove Haven's facade. The longing whispers were not vengeful but mournful, desperate for recognition. They needed her to recall what darkness had been wrought in their names. The sacrifice, it was a pact, a desperate choice to keep our family safe. She cried out, the realization pouring forth. She could feel the collective weight of their anguish, an overwhelming desire to be absolved, to be remembered. That in her mind, she pictured the ceremony. The chanting, the flickering light, the cloaked figures, her ancestors, beyond time and space, anchored to this cursed ground by choices made out of fear. They had sought power, needing to offer something precious to protect their lineage. "Stop hurting them," she shouted, the sincerity of her plea trembling in the air. "Let them go. Tell me what I must do to set you free." The shadows paused, the darkness turned still, and anticipation hummed in the air. Slowly, the dank room began to shift, revealing more than just the basement. Images began surfacing around her, her family in that very same room, bound by desperation, the power of their decisions manifesting as chains around them. In that moment of clarity, Sarah felt the echoes of the past fuse with her own heartbeat. She understood the only way to break the curse lay in acceptance, in acknowledging the sacrifice and allowing their story to be reclaimed. Looking down at the papers, she hurriedly scanned for any incantation or sentiment that could serve as her offering to them. Each word pulsed with raw energy, a lifeline linking her to their anguish. With newfound resolve, she began to read aloud, her voice hesitant but growing stronger as she embraced the legacy she inherited. "For the forgotten, I honor your pain. For the sacrifices made in dark hours," she recited, the words igniting a flicker of warmth in the chilling atmosphere. "You are not lost. You are remembered." The shadows began to respond, swirling violently around her like a tempest. As the energy surged through the room, carrying whispers of gratitude intertwined with their sorrow. The air thickened, the walls pulsed, and Sarah felt the reflection of her past and future converge. Suddenly, with a brilliant flash, the room expelled a wave of light that burst through the shadows, illuminating everything in its path. The suffocating darkness receded, dissolving into tendrils of mist until nothing remained but a profound silence. And there she stood, bathed in the soft glow of a warm light, breathing in the release of years-long torment. The weight on her heart began to lighten, and as she looked around, she felt their presence linger. "Thank you, we are free," she heard the whispers say, their voices warm, finally at peace. With every fiber of her being, Sarah knew her journey had not only liberated the souls of her family but herself as well. She turned and walked back towards the stairs, the door now open, leading her back to the world above the threshold. She paused one last time to whisper, "I'll remember." As sunlight poured into the room, she stepped forward, no longer just an unwilling participant in this haunted legacy, but an empowered voice to tell their story. Maple Grove Haven would never return to its old ways. It would be a sanctuary where memories lived on, honoring the past with every heartbeat of the future. And now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to be the first to hear new stories that dive into the unknown. Smash that like button to show your support and feed the algorithm. I want to hear from you. So flood the comments section with your theories about what happened to Sarah and her family. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Your support means everything, and together we'll explore more mysteries ahead.